This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
This is Everything Elite, the world's best podcast devoted exclusively to all elite wrestling and the Elite Extended Universe. This is actually the first time I've actually had to do that. But hey, y'all, it's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. As you all probably well know by now, Aaron and Nate are in Japan for the next few weeks. So I am left here as a designated survivor, but I'm not alone on this journey. Returning champion has come help me guest host this weekly edition of Everything Elite. I'd like to introduce my brother, returning champion, Drew Spears. Drew, how's it going?
Mike, thank you so much for having me. Nepotism alive and well. AEW, a brand focused around family and brotherhood. So glad that I get to enjoy the spoils of that. Glad to be on my favorite podcast about all elite wrestling, and Happy New Year, brother.
Yeah, Happy New Year, brother. Who would be and this would be kind of the theme of the show, who would be the head coach of the Spears dynasty or the Nightmare family, the Spears family, if we were so to choose?
The head coach of the Spears family. I mean, someone we know in real life or in wrestling?
Oh, just wherever you want to go with this.
I would say our head coach would be Nolan Ryan. I think that would be a good get. You know, he's from Texas, kind of that grizzled veteran. I think he could give us some good signals. Well, wait, no, we're podcasting. We got to get a podcaster. Our head coach is Murder Brian Quimby.
Yeah, no, Murder Brian would be the one
Murder
who would guide it.
Brian. We need to contract Brian to give us signals on what we talk about while podcasting, while creating content. So we should get Brian a tracksuit so he can accompany us to all of our podcasting events.
I'm right now imagining Murder Brian in like a velour tracksuit with his Columbus Blue Jackets hat on, just like yelling at us not to, screw up and asking us.
Don't say too much. Don't see, I just did it right there. If Brian was there, he would have been like no ums.
That's it.
Speaking of Brian, I understand that you have some Patreon content for him coming up.
Yeah, let's run through the plugs and stuff. Since I'm being left all alone hosting this, I have Aaron's framework, and we've already pretty much gone off the rails immediately. But that's what happens when you leave me in charge. I'm proud to report that neither Aaron nor Nate have been arrested either at an Idol show or at Stardom today. So I'm pretty happy for them right there. I was a little worried.
There was serious chance of that happening, whether it be getting in a fight with their fellow fans or some sort of, crisis of manners. I was listening to the New Year's Dash show about whether or not they know how to drink and wash their hands correctly. So all the best of luck to them and AT and SB. We miss you. Hope you're having fun.
Yeah, it seems like they're having the time of their life. So, Twitter, you could follow the podcast account at Everything AEW. My account is at Fujiheya. That's FUJIIHEYA. Drew is at Drew Spurs, like the thing you have on your cowboy boot. When you get a chance, subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us. And as Drew was talking about just a couple minutes ago, we have a Patreon set up where we do all kinds of content and things. There are 3 tiers, one for everyone's needs and means. This week on Patreon, Drew's already mentioned it, but we had Nate and AB's New Year Dash. Yesterday, we had the AEW pregame show, AEW Light, which is me breaking down Dark and previewing each episode of AEW Dynamite before it happens. AB had his Stardom status about the last Stardom show of the year. Tomorrow, because of when we are recording, this show is on New Year's Day. Ratings are always wonky around holidays. So tomorrow I will have a ratings report talking about what happened in AEW versus NXT. But next week, Drew, there's something I'm really excited to talk about that's coming out on Monday. And it's a good thing you mentioned our coach earlier, because he joins me on a new edition of the Small Business Wrestling Tyrants featuring Mike Quackenbush. And I recorded this a couple weeks ago, just have stuff prepped ahead time. And it might be the craziest and funniest audio that I've been a part of. So I'm really looking forward to people hearing that on Monday.
The first small wrestling tyrant was really good. Mike, I know you're a font of knowledge around Mike Quackenbush and Chikara. I always say the best content is content that may wind up ending in litigation. Thank goodness we have lawyers on the Everything AEW team. I'm very excited so that you can talk about the host of Till We Make It, Mike Quackenbush.
Yeah, it is. When I did my research for it, I really went deep into like the Wayback Machine, getting like old board posts. So I need to make sure that Aaron knows when this goes up, because as many times I've told him, he is my counsel. So
Yeah.
just in case.
That reminds me, I need to send you something that may work as an addendum to the Mike Quackenbush episode.
Okay.
We'll talk about that off mic.
All right, that sounds good. But then, and also next week, we'll have an edition of Light. As I just said, it's our AEW Dynamite pregame show that I put up every Wednesday. As this is the beginning of the month, thank you to all of our returning patrons and for our new patrons that have come aboard. It's the beginning of the month. We only have 2 bonus shows going right now, but I am certain by the end of January, we work real hard for your donations, and we greatly appreciate it. But we also have episodes of Light. If you are a $8 patron, you would have already know we're going to talk about today, because you get our run sheets and also some spreadsheets and just oodles of data. And again, we appreciate everyone who has become a patron so far. So this week, it's going to be a little bit of a tighter show just because we don't have ratings to talk about. So what today's show is going to be about, we're going to play Elite or Delete. That's a fun enough game that Aaron invented that I'm going to continue in his brief absence. And then we're going to talk about the results from the New Year's Day show that happened in Jacksonville last night. They called it Homecoming. But first, Drew, are you ready to play Elite or Delete?
I'm ready. I'm going to bring that smoke. I will bring opinions that are hot, and I will not apologize for them. I may apologize for some of them. I don't know.
Yeah. We are not the podcast in the next cubicle or over. We are here to bring it with heat. So, Drew, we can do 2 things since there's just 2 of us today. What were your 2 favorite things from last night's episode of AEW Dynamite?
Okay, my favorite thing from last night's AEW Dynamite, and I'm kind of struggling how to articulate this, but I would say my number one elite was the way that storylines progressed using the top of the wrestler's intelligence. And what I mean by that is, okay, there's 2 examples that I really have. One is, of course, the Inner Circle, John Moxley development. We've been watching wrestling for 22 years. We're pretty safe to say we're capable of saying John Moxley is not going to join the Inner Circle. He's going to tell them no, or if he joins the Inner Circle, it will be for a brief period of time in which he sows discord or tries to bring it down. We know the beats of this story.
Right.
But what I appreciate for this is everyone's acting to the top of their intelligence. Chris Jericho knows that there's no reason why Moxley should want to join the Inner Circle. So he's giving him the world, partial ownership in Inner Circle, the Ford GT, which might be a fun rib on John Cena. Everything that, like, even though we know John Moxley is not going to join the Inner Circle, we are given just enough where it's like, oh, everyone's being intelligent. Everyone's capable of like really selling this in a way that it gives you, if not like a doubt, because I don't believe he's going to join, but it allows me to be like, okay, I don't have to feel like this is stupid. Why would Moxley ever join? The inner circle is acting smart about it. I appreciate that Moxley acknowledges Jericho's help he's given with him throughout his career. It just feels like this is the smart version of wrestling. Not to say that that's uniform in AEW. Similarly, with the Cody and MJF stuff, I really appreciate that. It's like, okay, MJF is going to make it through hell to get the match with Cody if Cody gets it. And it just kind of is like, no one's doing anything where it's like, well, why would they do that? Everything makes sense.
Yeah, and at least like the MJF thing, it's not to MJF's benefit to have this match with Cody. Like he knows this guy, blames him for losing his only AEW world title shot. So he's going to make him do like a go through hell or high water. He's going to make him say, "You can't touch me. You have to beat Wardlow in a steel cage match." In Wardlow's first match, where he's been built up as a monster, and then using the thing that he can't touch him, he has to receive 10 lashes from MJF, which, naturally he will get fired up and want to strike MJF, but MJF's making it through hell and high water. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying with that. And I really loved the whole interplay between Jericho and Moxley, especially since it seems like they found a way to work around the fact that Jericho might already be in Japan. Like that was a pre-tape, very obviously. And using that and using it in a way that, like, exactly as you said, like Jericho knows he has to offer the world to him. So he does so. And Moxley acknowledges that, hey, you did a lot for me, even though we feuded in the past. You are someone that I see as like inspiration and as a friend at some time. So I'm going to take some time to think about it. But my favorite thing from the show, other than like this was a much better show than Before Christmas. This was probably one of their best shows that they've had so far, was Sammy Guevara just being all over this show, being like the perfect, like, there's a term in some parts of wrestling, but it's not really in the United States, called a lost post. Drew, are you familiar with the term lost post?
No, explain it to me.
So this is a big thing in both Dragon Gate and a little bit in New Japan. But the idea is in each stable, in each unit, someone's going to have to lose. And you don't want your leaders to always lose. You don't want like your guys you're building up to lose. So you have someone that you kind of dub as a lost post because there's someone that can take a fall and it doesn't really
Yeah, oh
matter.
yeah, the guy that's going to eat the pinfall.
Yeah.
Sammy's great in that. I think that's a great role for him. He kind of reminds me of late '90s, early 2000 X-Pac, when X-Pac
Yes.
was at his best in being such a cocky little shit and constantly never getting his comeuppance over people like Kane or stuff like that. Waltman was very good at being a sniveling little shit, and Sammy feels like the next iteration of that.
Yeah. And basically, leading between hour 1 and hour 2, you had the Moxley Trent match go straight into the inner circle and Moxley going straight into Samuel Guevara versus Dustin Rhodes. And he was the backbone of this because he came out right after Moxley beat Trent. He did the whole promo there. He stayed in the ring just being as I said on Twitter, a social media influencer, millennial dipshit. Like he's been like the male version of Caroline Calloway in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And going
Apparently
right in the
trying to
match.
hook up with Victoria Justice's sister, who I'm not familiar with. I know who Victoria Justice is. I do not know who her sister is.
Right.
But
That's
I
out of my
presume
age range.
people in their presume people in their early 20s popped big for that. Yeah, Sammy's great as that sort of character that can kind of thread throughout the show. You're not going to lose anything by having him get beaten up. And also, we've talked, I say we talked a lot. The last episode, and I also on the flagship, you hear a lot about like, this is now a quarterly pay-per-view cycle. AEW needs to let things like extend and live for a much longer period of time. And they've done a really good job with that with both the Jericho and Moxley thing, as well as the MJF and Cody. We know what the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks are going to be leading up to Revolution. It's going to be, a few more weeks of, this Jericho and Moxley. Will they, team up? Will they not? We have plenty of weeks in between where MJF is going to torture Cody. And it's a nice way to, like, defer gratification, whether it's, Dustin Rhodes is not going to get the big win over the Inner Circle because, Sammy and, Jake Hager can constantly fuck with him. So, ideally that, desire is going to be at a fever pitch by the time Revolution comes around.
Yeah, and that's something that I have kind of been waving the flag about is people need to reset their brains to what North American Major League Wrestling was for so long. The idea of that you're basically going to be working in 12-week cycles is what you said. And we're just approaching basically week 5 of the cycle. And we have enough stuff now between MJF and Cody and Moxley and Jericho, assuming that those are the endpoints that we're going to have that revolution that next week we have Cody's response, and then we have like the 3 weeks of like the commandments or like the 3 rules for the Cody match. And then with Moxley and Jericho, there's a lot of stuff they can do. I mean, Sammy Guevara, they've made very clear that he only had 1 singles win in 2019, which is totally fine because he's probably even more over without winning very many singles matches and just taking the falls in all these matches. So yeah, I think that was a really good point as well. The other elite thing for me this week was this was just like a very varied show in the ring. Like you had Darby versus Cody, which is like your kind of like up and comer versus established legend, at least legend to the fans there. And then you had the women's match, which was a pretty fun plunder brawl, just like 4-way. Everyone came in there and did that. Trent versus Moxley, which was a very stiff match. Dustin and Sammy, which I'll be honest, that is one of my deletes. I thought that match wasn't too good. And then a full-out sprint for the main event. So I really liked how varied it was in a ring-based format. And I feel like that was kind of a return to form when you look at like the first few shows that they had, that this show felt a lot more like that versus what we had at least right after Full Gear.
Yeah, I would say that my elite would probably be just like that nice mix of both like fun ring action while also progressing story and giving everything to care about. If the kind of bottoming out at the end of the year with the cringe Dark Order stuff and having Nightmare Family and just like people being like there's too many spooky ghosts and everything in AEW, then this was a nice reset. They were I think it's a bit of a gift where one thing, NXT is off this week, so you don't have to play the quarterly to quarterly, but at the same time it is a holiday and you're going up against a tough college football season. So you're not going to want to blow anything that's too big on this show. It kind of reminds me of the good version of a holiday show. Overall, you're going to feel good. The baby faces are going to get the win, but they had just enough progression in things to feel like this isn't a waste of time. So it was very watchable. 2 hours went by, and there wasn't a whole lot to complain about in ring. Backstage is a different thing. Can I just hit my delete?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, let me do my number one delete. My number one delete was definitely, I think, pretty much all of the backstage stuff was marred by either audio issues, but also was just shitty in general. It just didn't hit for me. I didn't think the stuff with SCU was that great. I didn't think the Janela and Kip Sabian thing didn't work for me. Don't love the Adam Page playing like a 1940s drunk. The Britt Baker thing. Just like I don't know what it is about their backstage, but it feels so much more inorganic versus the things that happen in front of the crowd. And I'm not super interested in people who are like nickel and dining what Tony Khan said it will or won't happen in the promotion. But he did say, you're going to see things that are there's not going to be any invisible cameras, which obviously there's not. But I just would notice the heat that you see when things happen in the arena versus they happen backstage. And also, yeah, this like, I don't like the direction they're going with Janela. I think Britt turning heel is great. I question doing it like planting the seeds of that in a backstage segment when you had an opportunity right after the match to have Britt be the one that beat the shit out of Riho. I mean, we can go into that later, but yeah, my first big delete was backstage. If you do backstage, get your fucking audio, working. This was the first episode where it's just like I really had trouble like following what was happening backstage because of audio stuff. And also just like, yeah, for some reason it feels so much more stilted than the things that happen inside of the arena.
Yeah, like that pretty much would have been my delete. The audio production miscues, that was awkward, and that's something that you're now 13 weeks in, you should have figured out. And then it's just like, so they're obviously going with Alex Marvez and Jen Decker as backstage interviewers, which I think Jen Decker is great at her role. Marvez still kind of does feel a little bit zanned out, for lack of a better word. But it's just like the way that they kind of interplay that. I thought the SCU one, probably out of all the ones that they had backstage, probably was the best one, if only because you already had like Guevara like get in there, and Guevara has just been great tonight. Like if I was going to name an MVP, I would probably say Sammy Guevara was my MVP, just because he kind of was the backbone of it. But the rest of it was just like the Joey and Penelope Ford thing. Joey versus Shawn Spears was my least favorite feud of last year, and I'm not really looking forward to the future of Joey versus Kip Sabian. Like that's
Yeah,
just like, who cares?
I mean, I'm happy to dig into how they've used Joey thus far. Right now, I definitely want to do it later. It's up to you if you want to dig into it now, because
Yeah, let's get into
I
it.
think okay. Uh, I I like Joey a whole hell of a lot. I'm a fan of his. You know, he's one of the most fun people to watch live. Go to GCW shows, seen him at PWG. He is such a charismatic performer and connects with a younger audience in a way that feels organic and real, kind of like a kind of millennial, like, oh, I like to party. I'm kind of like a, wild man. But I just don't understand why they can use Darby in such a perfect manner and get exactly how to use Darby. And it seemed, and I don't blame this on Joey, but it just feels like he hasn't been given the same opportunity, or they just don't. It's like, yeah, this Sean Spears thing didn't quite work out. He just gets like punched in the balls by his ex, and now Kip Sabian, who, has a very low profile on the show. He's not in it a lot. He's, on Dark and shit like that. I'm not super high on the idea of a Sabian Janelle. What would be your ideal use for Joey right now?
You see, that's really complicated, because I completely agree with you. Joey is someone that live, you totally get who Joey Janela is. You get his performance as a character. You get everything about him is pretty much laid out. And I was at Spring Break 2 with him, and he came into the Pontchartrain Convention Center and came in like a god. But each time I've seen him in AEW, it feels like, oh, he's playing TV Joey. He's playing like this version of it. And I know that like one of the things that people said that really bothered them was like the unsanctioned matches, just kind of feeling like they were there and how it is there. But there's like a part of Joey's personality that, and his characters, that intrinsically linked to the idea that he was the guy that was willing to kill himself to get himself known, to like get people to appreciate him. And it's just trying to find a way of threading that needle. And I don't know how you do that unless like you decide to have like a, lack of a better terms, a death match slash unsanctioned division. So like, it's very complicated. And he was someone that when they announced his signing, I got why they signed him, but I was always kind of trepidatious. I had some trepidation about him in a national and international audience, just because of who he is, who fundamentally is, his wrestling style and his look. And I'll take the L. I think that I was someone that was very skeptical about when he blew out his knee last year that he'd be able to come back and be in good shape like that. But he's proved me wrong about that. I just don't know how you portray him in a way that kind of goes up to his strengths, because you can't really have a Joey Janela spring break edition of AEW Dynamite unless he becomes some sort of star. But I think he needs to have that kind of thing in order to be a star, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't even know if it's that TV Joey doesn't quote unquote work, because he does seem to be over in the arenas, and it does seem like people like him quite enough. But I feel like they haven't kind of like figured out what his perfect foe is. I don't think it's going to be Kip Sabian. I would like to see him paired up with Pac. I think, someone who's like super athletic, but maybe antithetical to like that kind of hardcore, like crazy wild man style. I think would give Joey. I think he needs something worth fighting for. And if that's going to wind up being like this dickhead, stole my girlfriend, I'm less interested in that than I would be if he had like, a blood feud with someone proving his, merit as a wrestler. Or I don't want to just pivot into a pivot, but I was thinking about this morning, and I think it's incredibly smart that AEW is not getting, too belt saturated. I think it's really good. You got men's singles, you have women's singles, you got men's tag, you're probably going to get women's tag. But, I would like to see a little bit more things worth fighting for other than just win-loss. I think stuff like the Diamond Dozen is, fundamentally a good idea. They have these long breaks, and they do have these like wealth of like mid-card talent that is incredibly captivating, but giving them something kind of worth fighting over, whether it's like taking a page from New Japan and having, tournaments every now and then, or opportunities. This is something that WWE used to excel out before it turned into dog shit. You had Royal Rumble, and you had King of the Ring, and you had Money in the Bank, and there were all these opportunities, and I think they're on the precipice of that at AEW. But I think with these longer breaks in between pay-per-views, just giving something that's not a title, because you don't want to devalue titles, but just like something that's worth something, might give a little bit more propulsion and meaning to some of these mid-card workers.
Yeah, and I could see them already moving towards that, especially when you look at the fact that they made such a big deal out of Hangman Page winning the Casino Battle Royal. Like, and they made a big deal of that. Like, they had to kind of develop these things. And another title, when you only have essentially 3 hours of TV, I think that dilutes everything too much. And the people that they've gotten, that they've elevated and given them something worth with, you talk about your Darby Allins, your Jungle Boys, your people like that. That is because they had them paired off against legends, and that is how they derive their worth with. But you only have really like 2 or 3 guys that you're able to do that with and have them doing stuff. And that's also prohibiting your Codys, your Moxleys, your Jerichos from doing their own storyline thing. So yeah, I'll be real interested to see that, especially. I mean, we are now 3 weeks away from the Jericho cruise. Like, that sounds like a perfect time to do like the, I don't know, the Caribbean Cup. I mean,
Yeah,
just something.
something like creating a golden opportunity that allows you to jump the rankings or something like that. Maybe it's focused on different aspects. If you want to do some sort of like a deathmatch hardcore type thing, that's a great thing to get your Janellas and your Darbys and Havoc, if you wanted to, over. you know just something a little bit more friction in the mid card. I'd like to see a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that they could really use, and I think it'll be interesting to see what they develop to be these things of worth, as you kind of put it. The one thing, since you've already kind of talked about like the backstage stuff, I just like want to hone in on one backstage thing, and you mentioned it very briefly. This Britt Baker heel turn that was just done awkwardly as Riho was about to do an interview with Michael Nakazawa, just translating, and you just had them kind of stand there. You have your world women's champion on TV for the first time in weeks, just standing there as Britt Baker, very kind of droning, complained about her not being there. And I know that's something that there are people who are fans of Britt Baker that were like, heck yeah, Britt, go after her. She's never around. But at the same time, you're just like, okay, it's there's a lot about the show that does not insult their fans' intelligence. I've seen this on Twitter that like a lot of people are like, oh, Britt should know that Riho was in Japan doing shows for Stardom. They've brought up Stardom before, so it just was like a very awkward thing. And maybe it is. And I try to take my bias out of this, but it's clear that Britt Baker is not going to be the leading woman face that they positioned herself as leading out of Full Gear. But I don't. I hope this works out for her. But trying to set up a heel turn just based on that, and not like how you said, had her beat up Riho instead of Nyla Rose after the match, just felt really awkward and it felt stilted.
I only blame Britt for this really minorly. I think that she was not set up for success here. So let's look at Rio's night. Has a four-way title defense, has to like get it from the skin of her teeth. Nyla Rose then splashes her through a table. Then she's well enough to give an interview. And maybe I don't exactly remember what the interview was going to be about, but you would think like, it should be about how she fucking got splashed through a table. And then Britt comes on and, kind of, whines that, Riho isn't around. Now, who's the bigger heel that, Riho would want to focus her attention on? Is it the person who whined about how she wasn't there? Or is it the person who put her through a fucking table? The person who could have destroyed her? I don't like that they had her back on the show seemingly okay after a table bump from a monster heel, but you could have had Britt give that beat down. I mean, we already know Nyla's a badass who's going to put people through tables. Maybe you have Britt save Riho from Nyla, and then Britt does the beat down. I think the genre of heel they're going for with Britt is probably smart. It's that kind of like we've seen a lot in wrestling when a face is kind of disliked by the audience. You have to lean into that and make them be like, well, why don't you like me? I think WWE tried to do that with Rollins recently to what I'm assuming is middling effect. But you're not setting up Britt for success, because it's like, where is Riho behind the 8 ball on? It's going to be against her title defense with Chris Statlander next week. It's going to be with Nyla, who may put her through the table. And so then third is Britt on your like it. I feel for Britt, because I feel like she was not set up to succeed there. Now, if they're slow building her turn where she's just gonna complain and whine slowly over months and just make her into this really insufferable hero character, that works. The heel who thinks she's a face, that could be fun. But it's just not the first gripping thing I would want to see from a Britt Baker heel turn.
Yeah, I think those are pretty salient points, especially Riho, where her attention will be drawn to, because it was built up over the few weeks after the thing about Chris not going to be here tonight for this title match, that they decided to have the rest of the top 5 face off against Riho, and then have basically Chris Statlander have next, and then like that should be like motivation 1 or 2. And then you have Nyla, who drove her through a table, and that was a pretty rough looking table bump. Like, it looked great for Nyla, who is now she had 2 table spots in this match and came out of it looking every bit of the monster that they built her up to be before she was quote unquote suspended. Then you have Baker, who, like, as we both have said, it's just, I do believe with you. I do agree with you that there is something that maybe Britt was set to feel in this a little bit. But at the same time, like, she is someone that when you're given that kind of promo, you gotta deliver it. And that promo was just, it was like droning. It was kind of fitting, though, that you had her there. And I think it was with Marvez. Yes, it was Marvez, who's also a very low key person. And then both having this, and you have Riho and Nakazawa just standing around going, what's going on here? So it just was awkward all the way around.
Points for Britt for getting a plug-in for her dentistry office. I think Small Business Tyrant is a good heel move. And I think there's plenty of time to, save this heel turn. Have her beat the shit out of other Joshis. Have her go after Emmy, have her go after Hikaru Shida. Just like, you have her just demolish people in a road for Riho. You can have Nyla trying to get at Riho. Maybe Chris gets the belt. I don't know. Chris is probably set up to be with the Nightmare Family. I do think that AEW has fixed the problem that people accused them of having 2 or 3 months ago, where it was like not enough storylines for the women's division. They got a lot of stuff cooking there. So at the very least, you can say that they do have, a lot of stories going.
Yeah, they have really, for a promotion that was criticized, and some of it may have been unfairly, but it did feel like that there was just stuff going on, and then like the only big storyline was Britt versus B going to that pay-per-view, even though there's a women's title match. It does seem like that there is a lot of people and motivations going on. Like, we still really haven't seen what like Ali is going to be like, other than a manager for Butcher and the Blade. So I mean, there's stuff going on. I think that's a good point you made about the fact that they've kind of rectified some of the mistakes there. But unless you have anything else to add in, I think we could probably go through the show itself. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, let's do it.
All right. As I said before, no ratings update because of New Year holiday. They might be up by the time we're recording. I don't think so. There was a post today saying that they had the broadcast ratings, but not the cable ones, which is pretty much par for the course for holidays. So I'll be back
Yeah,
there.
I also don't think you're going to be able to divine much from these ratings. It's a holiday, and I think the AEW fan kind of idea of where they're going to watch stuff like the Rose Bowl over AEW probably will hold true. So I don't know what you can necessarily divine other than like maybe what your core audience is.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And interestingly enough, one of the big things before the show was everyone was speculating about Taz being an authority figure. Nah, Taz was just there because Georgia was playing.
Yeah, dumb. I mean, AEW discourse got dumb over the holidays, just like how every discourse got dumb over the holidays. People had too much time on their hands. The whole stuff with Chris and bar wrestling and beyond, super stupid. No one gives a shit really all that much, of whether or not their social fucked something up. Who fucked up? It's no one like Taz got announced and everyone was like, I can't believe they're doing a authority figure or they needed an authority figure. And it's just like, honestly, we get it. Everyone's like at home for the holidays or has nothing going on. So they're terminally online and screaming at each other.
Yeah, that's kind of in retrospect what that really felt like. So go running down the show, Drew. If there's any point you wanted to elaborate on, just feel free to jump in. Show kicked off with a promo package by I think it probably was the Kevin Sullivan crew who did this. That was basically the whole idea about it was how the Elite's year was, and then starting off with launching the promotion and how there was a lot of doubt on if they're still really the Elite. Is tonight going to prove if the Elite were the Elite? I thought this was really well done. It was something that, with the way that they always release these things ahead of time, it's kind of hard for me to like pick this out as one of my favorite things because by the time you watch it on screen, it's not new anymore. So I
Oh,
feel,
was this a video that had already been released online?
yeah, they leaked this onto YouTube. I want to say 5 hours before the show. It was yesterday afternoon.
Okay, I didn't see it online. I thought it was good
Hmm.
on TV. Maybe the audience hasn't watched I mean, clearly they haven't watched in a week because they had an off week. It lets people know what this episode's going to be about. Not that there needs to be one overarching story in an episode of wrestling, but Elite's been beaten down. What's their future hold? Oh, they had some wins. It's a feel good episode to start the year.
Yeah, and that's kind of was the overall theme of the show. So went into that to a 3 shot of the commentary desk. This was outside at Dolly's place for people who don't remember. That's where they had Fight for the Fallen, and they had the two extremes of Florida weather between these two shows. Yesterday's show was like 50 degrees, and over the summer it was typical Florida heat. So I thought that was kind of funny. So it went pretty much straight from there to the opening match. This was Cody versus Darby Allin. This match started because of Darby agreeing to team with Cody against Butcher and the Blade and wanting to get back at his loss. They had another kind of special Darby intro video, and I thought that this is something that, kind of going back to the Joey Janela thing, they always set up Darby to come off as the biggest superstar in the world. They had this video, they had a guy in a band come out with him, and they had a very competitive, very strong match. And that's kind of going back to your point about how Joey Janela does not get this yet. Maybe that's the reason, because I thought that other than the one moment in the match that I'll get into a second, Drew, but I want to get your thoughts on this first. I thought that everything about this match was very successful and kind of capitalized on why is Darby a draw? Why are people compelled to be a fan of Darby? Because Cody won this match after 15 minutes after getting his knees up during the coffin drop and getting a quick flash pin. And I thought this was really well done.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen some people say that Darby shouldn't be eating pinfalls the amount that he has. I do understand where that's coming from. You don't want him to look like a dork in the way that a lot of underdog characters in, say, WWE wind up looking like dorks because they lose all the time. But I think, you're a stats dork. You like the ranking shit. There's a quality of wins here, and there's a quality of losses. So, Darby, as long as he doesn't eat embarrassing losses, as long as he's not made to look like a fucking wimp, he's gonna be fine if he loses to Cody. I got excited, and I thought they were gonna do a draw, and I thought that would be super cool. But they needed to get over this idea of Arn Anderson as a head coach. I thought it was pretty clever. Cody took a smart opportunity and got it. It wasn't because, Darby looked like shit. He can eat pinfalls like this as long as you have him not look embarrassed. He's supposed to be an underdog. He's supposed to lose a lot. Not that his run in Evolve was by any means perfect, but they were pretty good at understanding that like Darby can lose and he'll be fine. No one's gonna be like, well, this guy always loses, because he can also win, and it feels really good when he has those big wins. But they have to come kind of few and far between and be hard fought. Otherwise, he's not an underdog.
Yeah, I completely co-sign with all that. And I thought that Arn playing the head coach, so now they have had like advisors, managers, head coach. I feel like that they defined his role very well. They made a nice little reference on commentary, how I guess he had like his hand over his mouth or like a piece of paper over it, trying to make sure that if he was saying like things to Cody, that Darby couldn't like lip read him or it'd be hard for him to hear. So I thought they did a good job here. The only thing in this match I didn't really like, just because it's kind of contrary to Darby, was him ripping off the turnbuckle pad. I mean, like, yes, it came in play later, but just seems kind of antithetical to Darby's character.
Yeah, I see that. It didn't bump me too bad. Maybe that's because I have already previously gotten pissed off at Darby being given a heel match at PWG Bola this year, so this was by far means a lot less. Not that I'm sure Darby could be a great heel. I think things like that, it's like, well, opportunity arises. You're gonna fight a little dirty from time to time. So I understand why it bumps for people. It didn't bump me that hard. And then when it eventually got used, it was more like incidental.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there with that. So after that, we had the SCU promo with Jen Decker with Sammy Guevara coming out, interrupting, getting challenged by Chris Daniels. That will be happening next week in South Haven, Mississippi. The next match was the four-way women's match. It was Riho defending against Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, and Hikaru Shida. Riho defended the title by getting a pin on Britt Baker with a jackknife during like a final stretch where it was basically she, as you said, it got a win with her skin of her teeth. Baker did kick out like at 3.5, which was kind of something. But I thought this match, as I said earlier,
Holy Ray, School of Wrestling. You got to get that kick out right after the three.
yeah. But I love this match. I thought that they picked like the segments. Like there was a really long segment between Nyla and Hikaru Shida that was really, really like the two of them like throwing bombs against each other, and they made each other look great. I mean, like Hikaru Shida is someone that has not been a clear focus, but she's always been able to get over in front of a live crowd, which I've really enjoyed. And this was just like a really fun brawl. There was some kendo sticks. There was a table. There was an apron sent on through a table. It just was a fun little match.
Yeah, I would say lean into some of that plunder shit more in four ways. It's always fun. You can just be like, oh, it's relaxed rules because it's the championship and it's a four-way, and you're not gonna disqualify and end the match because of one person's actions. Yeah, I want to see more tables and kendo sticks in the women's division, especially if you're gonna do a four-way. I want it to look like a train wreck, and it almost got there. But I thought everyone pretty much came out looking really good.
Yeah, it was something that everyone kind of did it, and it kind of made sense that like, that Riho was able to yank the pen out because was trying to escape the car wreck, and she was able to pick her moment and get the jackknife and win there. So I thought that was pretty neat. After that, we had two interview segments. The first one was the Joey one with Marvez that we talked about, where Penelope Ford low blowed him with Kip Sabian by her side. The next one was our only real mention of the Dark Order after they had the big elite beatdown to end 2019. It was as paid by the Elite Order or the Dark Order. And the big thing here was that Evil Uno promised an Exalted One is coming soon. Drew, do you have any guess who this Exalted One should be, and who do you think would be really funny for it to be?
I mean, first of all, I just want to say probably smart idea giving a real leader to Dark Order. The audience at large really doesn't know who the former Super Smash Bros. Are or have much reason to care about them or the Beaver Boys, so giving them a singular leader. Oh boy. Well, I know what would be very funny, and that's Jimmy Havoc. And I mean, unless they're gonna, I mean, I heard some people saying like, "Oh, maybe this is the perfect thing for Matt Hardy," and I know that he's been kind of weird with WWE. There's always, Marty in the ether. Both of those feel wrong to me. Maybe, well, I mean, Hardy if they have Hardy, but I kind of don't think they do. I'm gonna say it's gonna be Jimmy Havoc. He hasn't been doing anything. You know, he as a hardcore face guy kind of feels the same function as they have with Darby and uh, Janela. So they're not doing anything with him. He's kind of a spooky freak. Make it Jimmy Havoc. Sure, it'll be funny.
Yeah, like it's also like the idea of Jimmy Havoc trying to do motivational promos, which really amuses me, and I think that would make that great as well. Yeah, I mean, I heard Harper possibly, but Harper's never really been a mic guy, so that doesn't make much sense to me.
Oh, okay, yeah. He would be a tight choice for that. Yeah, I mean, if they got him, then that's who it should probably be.
Someone I forgot he mentioned this said, "Wouldn't it be funny if it was Quackenbush?" And I'm just imagining now me somehow accidentally speaking my Quackenbush in existence after recording of Brian a couple weeks ago.
I mean, if he does Till We Make It, his acclaimed YouTube show about how to make it as a wrestler by doing laundry good and ironing your tights, but he's doing it under Dark Order stuff. Yeah, all in on that. But I would say who it should be is Brody Lee. Who I want it to be is Jimmy Havoc because that'll be incredibly funny.
Yeah, for sure. After that, we had Trent versus John Moxley. As I mentioned earlier, this was just like if there was going to be a quote unquote Kings Road Star strong style match, this one kind of felt like it. They did a bunch of trading holds earlier, doing a bunch of chops. There was one little moment of Orange Cassidy, which John Moxley, as the big megastar, wasn't too phased and kind of got up in his face too. But Moxley ended up beating Trent after two paradigm shifts, and Trent took two of the gnarliest looking paradigm shifts I've ever seen. And I thought this
Yeah,
was a whole lot of fun.
I mean, Trent is very much when people used to be like, the problem with Dolph Ziggler is that he sells too good. Trent is the real version of that, where he takes terribly gross bumps and makes whoever gives it to him look like a total badass. What do you think about Trent as this role of, kind of upper mid card, gonna get beaten up by main eventers kind of thing, in this kind of like trio of the best friends in Orange Cassidy, now that it seems to have more of a focus on Trent as a singles guy?
It's kind of interesting because this is reminiscent about the idea that everyone thought that New Japan was really going to push Trent and that Trent was destined for big things and kind of supplanted that into All Elite Wrestling. I'm okay with a tag team guy being a solid tag team worker of his tag team, but then also being a jobber to the stars. Like I feel like that's a decent role, and I think Trent is someone that has enough of a crowd connection with everyone that it makes it work. So I'm okay with this. I think this is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think Trent's great at the role. I do think that there could be more of a focus on face tag teams in the division, and I do wonder if you're not kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face to get Trent, especially because it's like presumably it's gonna be a while until Trent gets a singles push.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I want to see a few more like tag team faces kind of get some prominence outside of the Bucks and SCU. So I don't know if that's going to be, Jungle Express or Best Friends, but it does feel like maybe it's by focusing on Trent mainly losing in singles matches that they're missing that opportunity to get them very over by having them be a winning face tag team.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That is something that you might be risking something, and then you're also wondering like, okay, Chuck Taylor, I'm so happy he now has like a full time main event, like main roster thing on a leading promotion, but you're kind of have him there really as like the third person when in reality he might be one of the better people for these tag matches because of his long experience of doing this, and you're cutting him off so that Trent could look better. So I mean, there definitely is going to be a time where we come to conversation about that.
Also, I want to real quickly that Cassidy and Moxley spot goes to show how good Moxley is at interjecting humor
Hmm.
while not losing his character. He complained so much about doing goofy, dumb shit in WWE, and you can see someone on Twitter pushing up the bridge of their glasses to their nose by saying like, "Oh, but he'll do a spot with Orange Cassidy." The character of John Moxley can be funny intermittently and still not lose his like badass edge, and I do appreciate that. That's an incredibly hard needle to thread, and I appreciate that Moxley does it really well.
Yeah, yeah, and he doesn't lose the badassness of the John Moxley character, and I think that's pretty central to if you're going to have him be interjecting with comedy, he can't lose face.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in the G1 when he got beaten by Yano. It ruled. It worked.
One of like I think that actually might be my most recent New Japan match I watched this year was him versus Yano, and it ruled.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh no, like there's a reason why I don't do any of the real Kadani cast stuff, just because like I watch Stardom and New Japan. I got too much stuff to watch. New Japan's the thing that gets cut, and I'm fine with that.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that might be the most controversial thing said today is me saying I don't watch New Japan except for things that personally amuse me. That's fine. So after that, we had the whole Inner Circle and Moxley thing that we talked about earlier. Again, that was a really well done thing. Touching on the thing that Drew talked about a little bit earlier, the whole 4GT thing, it probably wasn't intended to be a joke about John Cena and how John Cena sold his car he wasn't supposed to. But that's how I interpreted it, Drew. Was that for you as well?
I mean, I didn't catch it immediately, but seeing people talk about it in the DMs, just for a little bit of background, the Ford GT is one of the most expensive cars in America. When you buy it, you have to sign a contract saying that you will not resell it within 2 years of ownership, which is something that John Cena, who is a renowned car guy and star of movies such as the upcoming Trolls doll movie. No, that's not what he's starring in coming up. He's starring in the upcoming Jumanji. Not Jumanji, fuck. Third time it's the best. I can hit it. Oh, he's doing Doolittle. He's one of the voices in Doolittle. Anyway, car enthusiast and star of Doolittle, John Cena, sold his Ford GT and got sued by the Ford Motor Company for selling their car. Is this a rub at him? Maybe, maybe not. I've talked about this for too long. Sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. It's a bizarre thing, and John Cena's a bizarre person, so it's worth mentioning. That went right into Dustin Rhodes versus Sammy Guevara. Sammy won after Jake Hager came out earlier in the match and blowed him. I thought this was the weakest match on the show. It just kind of was there. Dustin did
Uh,
a destroyer on the apron, which was wild.
Yeah, this was probably the least quality ring work match, but also like TV matches don't need to be high on ring work. Dustin did enough tight shit. Nothing embarrassing or no one looks stupid in this match, which is I think what the bar should be in TV wrestling is don't waste. It's like what your mantra is: don't waste my time. Don't make the people look like fucking dorks and don't have anything that exposes them as green if they're green. So it can be not the most compelling match, but if it gets over Dustin as this never say die, veteran, if it gets over Hager as this asshole, if it gets over Sammy as this shit, and you do some tight stuff in between it, I'm all for it. So this didn't really rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, that's a fair point. After that was when we kind of got into the video package slash non in-ring stage of the show. Private Party had a bar interview with Jen Decker. Hangman Page stormed in, poured a drink. The three of them got into arguments about him pouring a drink at their bar. And this was just kind of furthering the whole Adam Page is a very unhappy person right now. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some discussion about whether or not they're bringing in too many being the elite things into the show without addressing them, and they've done that with Page previously. So, is this the first kind of maybe Adam Page has a drinking problem thing on the show? Because if so, that's a kind of a weird thing to like just interject.
They had
Uh,
I was gonna say that they had one of the chyrons for him a couple of weeks ago, saying that when he came out of the ring, and said the week previous to that match that he sat at home drinking. So
Oh, okay. Well, if it's being, I mean, during that backstage thing, I was like, I'm not super into this. This seems dumb. I'm glad. I do like the idea of Private Party having their own private bar. That's a good
mhm.
face thing to happen. They should probably bring that into the arena and have fans being able to get some free drinks, and then you can do some tight spots around it during the show. That's very like WCW Nitro energy, but I think that would be funny. The Chiron of Adam Page has been drinking really good stuff. I'm not super sold on him being like a Scott Hall drunk kind of character. especially not to be too much of a bummer, but a week or two after the sad passing of a wrestler due to drinking issues. But whatever, they're playing it up like it's Looney Tunes, and I'm glad to see Private Party get back into the spotlight where they deserve.
Yeah, this was something that for Private Party they've kind of been aimless since the match that they had with Proud and Powerful about Matt Travis. So it's nice to see this, and I think it'd be really great if they had like the Private Party bar there. And I mean, that's a pure marketing thing that they could be doing. I think that's a great idea, Drew.
Bash at the beach, Jericho Cruise. It's a great time. They can be bartenders and shit. It'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we had the big MJF versus Wardlow in-ring thing. Big things from that were the stipulations we talked about before. Match will happen at Revolution if Cody does not touch MJF beforehand. MJF must face and defeat War Dog in a cage match, and Cody must get whipped 10 times by MJF. This was probably like and I know that this sounds like something where I've been very high on him. Not my favorite MJF promo. I felt like he really was trying to lean into the Jacksonville baiting, and the crowd was just like, "Oh, okay, you're making fun of us." And he, instead of focusing on this promo, that turned out to be good, but like the first like couple minutes of it just seemed like, "Okay, we get it. You think Jacksonville fans are dumb."
Yeah, MJF's great on the mic. I thought this was fine, but I do see the point that like he's almost such a fun heel, and so it's so fun watching him kind of tear into people that it kind of undercuts his heel work by him. It's like kind of a throwback where it's like, yeah, well, it's the SCU thing. SCU started by saying this town sucks, we hate it, and then everyone ate that shit up, and then that became a face thing. So I think he could stand to maybe learn. And this isn't a fault of his. I'm sure he was given a directive, but Jericho, when he was heel for the first time, he's kind of gone away from it. But like back in WWE, he would really make a point of being unfun and uncool. And I think there's a midpoint between that MJF could stand to hit, where he's not too clever and he's not too funny, because then you're gonna like him too much. But otherwise, yeah, I'm excited to see the next couple of weeks of Cody going through hell to fight MJF.
Yeah, and this will be the first ever AEW cage match that this happens between him and Wardlow. And that's going to be a real interesting kind of, I've said this enough, but threading a needle about how you have Cody. I mean, if this match is going to happen, and he's going to have to beat him. He's going to beat Wardlow, but how do you keep Wardlow looking strong after that? Like, do you have him absolutely destroy him in the cage afterwards? It's an interesting route for them to go to this very obvious endpoint happening at Revolution.
Wait, question. Maybe I missed this. Does Cody have to defeat Wardlow to get the match?
Yes.
Okay. I think that there's a pretty easy workaround. Cody wins by happenstance or something like, MJF and Wardlow decide to just kind of throw the match so that they can beat the living shit out of Cody in a cage for like 10 minutes. I think you can have Cody win but lose while in the process.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting because if Wardlow's just going to be a thug, he could obviously be beaten, and even being kind of banana peel-ish of like him power bombing him through the cage and he gets out that way, even though that's a little bit like to WWF Attitude Era stuff. But there's ways you can get around it. So okay,
Yeah, I
go
haven't
ahead.
seen Wardlow wrestle. Sorry, I haven't seen Wardlow wrestle yet. But I hope they protect him and he looks good by being a badass who can beat the shit out of Cody. They've been very smart in picking their spots for their big guys who may not be work rate guys being in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that MJF called him War Dog and also Mr. Mayhem. So maybe we're gonna have him come out in a full like Sons of Anarchy cut, and maybe that's gonna be his look, which would be so bizarre if that'd be for. All right. So a couple more videos after this. They had Jungle Boy versus Jericho showed about how Jungle Boy got the 10-minute draw and then Jericho ran away during the overtime. Weird promo with Jen Jacker that I couldn't hear a single word of what went on that. Did you catch it, Drew?
I caught a little bit of what Jungle Boy said. I heard nothing of Luchasaurus. I was watching this at my fiance's apartment, and her quick note was Jungle Boy is bad on the microphone. And,
Yeah.
I think you could probably count the amount of like wrestling promos she's seen with one hand, with fingers left over. And her main thing was like, oh, this guy should not be on a microphone. And I feel like Jungle Boy, you do want him on the mic a little bit, but like he does better in those kind of sit down interviewee type stuff versus like hype and promo, which I don't know if you can kind of split the difference,
Hmm.
but it is something that they're going to have to deal with to get this person who seems divine to be, a main event babyface over, but he's going to need to kind of figure out what he wants to do on the mic.
Sure. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. We had a full pitch for the Memphis Legends, which made me think about what Memphis Legends they'll have. And I only came up with the old announcer Dave Brown and Bill Dundee. So maybe we'll get that. I know Janela knows Dundee. So maybe Bill Dundee shows up next week.
Open the Hell's Gate, gotta you don't have to open the Hell's Gate to be good, but they're gonna do it. I mean, maybe Gilbert. I mean, wasn't there some talk about maybe getting Doug Gilbert on the mic?
I don't know if that's something that needs to happen. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see that. That was kind of the big pull for that. We had Marvez with the Riho.
Oh shit! Sorry. Real quick. They gotta give it to regional legend, Mr. Walk It Out, John Poe.
Okay.
That's what they need to honor. That and GQ. Those are the two big Memphis legends that I want to see. Oh, seriously though, who's that older guy that did that GCW Wombat match that's like really good for his age?
Oh, geez. Mike Jackson.
Mike Jackson. Yeah, have him come out.
Yeah, have Mike Jackson in the ring. Like, let's have Mike Jackson versus Hangman Page. Like, that'll be fun. Let's do it. So after that, we had Marvez with Riho, Nakazawa, and Britt. We talked enough about that earlier. Last segment beforehand was Page coming out. He was drinking on the desk, and they had that little chyron that Drew mentioned about beforehand. That led into the main event. It was the trios match of the Elite of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega versus Lucha Brothers and Pac. Omega defeated Phoenix via a V-trigger and one-winged angel. I thought this was a really fun sprint. I thought this was the match of the night, and I thought that they had a real interesting way of dealing with Pac in there without him looking like a chump on the losing team.
Yeah, I mean, those are 6 guys you want to protect, but you also need to have a decisive winner. Fun match, good reason to get, the story is the Elites on the upswing. Good way to do it. I have 2 questions for you, Mike. And I don't know how I feel about this. So, do the Lucha Bros need to be a tag team focus right now?
I personally think that there's not too much for the Lucha Bros to do as tag team wrestlers right now. Whereas I think that Phoenix, there's a lot of stuff to do. And I think the same is with Penta. And at the same time, it does not seem like since there was like the big sit down about tag team stuff that the Lucha Brothers have looked as comfortable on TV as a tag team as they had before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about them not looking comfortable, but I do feel like you have Proud and Powerful. You have all these tag teams kind of in the mix. And if you're not, I mean, I feel like if the Lucha Bros are going to be in the tag team division, they should probably be dominant champs. And since it's not like the Young Bucks where like the Young Bucks are going to stay in the tag division. You have this nice opportunity to now. Granted, they might start something with Cody or Dustin next week, and that'll be smart. But I just feel like they could stand to have like a little bit deeper singles upper mid card to main event. Both those guys can be slotted into the main event, and it just feels like you can always bring them back into the tag team. But they might. I mean, hell, you could have 2 matches with them versus Pac. I just think that unless they're gonna get in a blood feud with another tag team again, I feel like their tag focus might be time to kind of transition them to singles guys because they're both great singles guys. Phoenix is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Penta is one of the most charismatic, and with protection can look amazing. And it just does feel like maybe they're missing out because they've been kind of not doing much since they wrapped up their feud with the Young Bucks, or I guess sort of wrapped it up because they're still fighting them.
Yeah, that's, I think, a pretty fair point. And that ended the show. There was a big post-match thing where Kenny came down that where Kenny won, he motioned out there, and Cody came out to the ring, and they all made a motion to Paige, who was at the commentation desk drinking, to come down to the ring and celebrate with the Elite, but he begged off, and now we have the whole thing of now it's pretty clear that in Paige's mind, he's no longer a member of the Elite, but the Elite don't consider it that way, and that was the Fade to Black.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they're probably, I mean, if not a heel turn, they're probably going to wind up having Paige fight Omega at Revolution. They probably need another person. Maybe if they do wind up getting Marty, maybe Marty's the one that, unites them all eventually. I don't know if I necessarily want that to happen, but, that certainly is a route. But yeah, it was a nice feel good with, also setting up a few questions in the horizon. I do have one other question about this match, and
Okay.
it's the role of trios in AEW, which is mainly what is the role of trios in AEW. And this is unfair because these aren't questions you would have to ask WWE, but the bar is so much lower for WWE. It's like, oh good, they didn't make someone eat dog doo-doo, and you're like, well, at least this week they didn't make their main event face eat dog doo-doo, fed to him by Baron Corbin. But since there seems to be such a focus on logic and reason of rankings and what it means when you win a tag match and what it means when you win a singles match, they have so many wrestlers and so many mini units to kind of use a trios match. I just would like to know what happens when someone wins or loses a trios match, whether that's, they're put in like, the pinning, in New Japan, they do a great job in multi-man match. If you pin the champ, you're probably going to get a match with the champ down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would like to see some sort of tangible, they did have that one thing at Fight for the Fallen where the Darby, Jimmy Havoc, and Janela team lost, and then they had a 3-way fight and the next pay-per-view. So I guess, I don't know, maybe this is me being too picky, but, I'd like to see the trios matches mean a little more.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to something that you brought up earlier, this would be a good thing to do as something to fight for, is have a trios league or a trios tournament, because you've had the lead out there of stuff. The Lucha Brothers and Pac was supposed to be a trio at Fyter Fest. Like, there's things you could be doing with this, but it does not seem like there's a clear thing other than this is kind of their big main event trios match, which they've had a lot of, which I'm not going to complain about. They've done a good job with these in the main event. But yeah, it does make you wonder, like, Kenny pinned Phoenix. What does that mean for Phoenix? What does that mean for Kenny? So I think that's a pretty valid point. So, Drew, we got a couple more things I want to hit on before we get out of here. On Dark, we had 3 matches taped for Dark in Jacksonville. We had Gunn and Son of Billy Gunn. That's right. The one Drew was back in AEW, teaming with Austin Gunn versus Sean Spears and Preston Vance. We had Awesome Kong versus Skylar Moore. Skylar Moore is a Dudley Brothers trainee. And then another trios match of SCU versus Hybrid 2 and Kip Sabian.
Yeah, sounds like I mostly will be tuning in for the first part of Dark to see Double Guns.
That's fair.
Don't really. Maybe I'll be surprised. But I mostly want to see Austin and Billy Gunn team up.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, who doesn't want to see a father and son team up? It's heartwarming. So, what we have set up for the next edition of Dynamite, it will be on the 8th in South Haven, Mississippi, which is apparently in the Memphis metro area. But we have 4 matches and then one other thing. Of course, we have Riho defending against Chris Statlander, Christopher Daniels versus Samuel Guevara, Private Party versus Adam Page and Kenny Omega, and then the Rhodes Brothers versus the Lucha Bros. And we get Memphis Legends throughout the night. I'm really looking forward to those tag matches. Those should be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, already set up to be a really fun show. Those are going to be great. I really do like how they inject the local flavor into these shows. So I would love to see some Memphis-y style shit go down. Mainly giving Doug Gilbert a live mic and asking him, I don't know, his opinions about any WWE Hall of Famers who might also be illustrators and commentators.
That is a live wire that if they toe that line, they're willing to give Doug Gilbert a microphone, and they give Turner a thing. I mean, Turner already lets them say shit on air. It's just making sure they don't say anything else. So that would be interesting. So Two last
Oh,
news.
the other thing I don't know if he counts as a Memphis legend, but have someone beat the shit out of Tracy Smothers and have them tear off that fucking t-shirt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just have them destroy that t-shirt. So two things are kind of happening news. It was kind of because it's been a little bit of a while since the last like news episode of Everything Elite. There were two things. First off, we have Jericho versus Tanahashi and then Moxley at Wrestle Kingdom this weekend. Jericho and Tanahashi, they say it's for an AEW world title shot. I think that just tells you who's going to win that match, and it's going to be Chris Jericho, personally. I don't know, Drew, if you thought that there was any chance that Hiroshi Tanahashi was coming to All Elite.
Yeah, that's probably true. Against my heart of hearts, I would love to see the ace in AEW, but yeah, probably politics get in the way. But also those people are capable of swerving us all. Maybe the kind of complaining about New Japan's kind of treating the Elite's exit was misdirect. Uh, Tanahashi would be dope in AEW, but yeah, probably Jericho wins.
Yeah, and then Moxley, I think they're setting up so that Juice Robinson gets his big win on Moxley in the second night there. There was also like a news note where Chris Jericho did like an interview with someone, and I saw this like come across my blog feed, and I clicked it and immediately disregarded it, where Jericho said that like he wasn't promised the AEW title and that it was a prop, and he's just using this as a way to get other people over, which I think whenever Chris Jericho has an interview like this, usually he's working, but I thought that was kind of an interesting note for us to end on.
Yeah, Jericho is a really smart guy. I think he says things for a reason, and I think there's a reason why he said that.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I felt like that as well. But that's all we have for this episode. Drew, is there anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Real quickly, I mean, I did see that AEW has a hold in May on Ontario, California, for a Dynamite. So I hope that turns out to be true, so that they can finally come to the West Coast and have the Bucks big homecoming. Because they're probably going to draw big in California when they make that move.
Ontario, is that the Honda Center?
It's the Toyota Center, I believe, but I might be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, it's where the Ducks play though. So, okay. Drew, any plugs you want to get out before we close up?
Yeah, I have a few plugs. I host a podcast with my friend Kate Raft called This Podcast is Self-Care. It's a podcast where we talk about the culture of self-care and interview comedians and other interesting people about their self-care routine. If self-care is not something you're interested in, you may still enjoy the podcast, because we kind of come through it through the lens of, we think the culture around it is, ridiculous and vampiric, but you still have to treat yourself good. So search for that wherever you get your podcasts. If you're in Los Angeles, you can see me perform on Tuesday nights at UCB Franklin. I have a monthly book club show called Cook Blub that will be throughout April. All this stuff can be found on my Twitter account. I will also be starting a streaming Twitch stream very soon. I'm planning on doing one of my streams Wednesday nights immediately after AEW Dynamite. It will probably be wrestling focused. If you're a fan of a certain wrestling league simulator, you might enjoy it. But otherwise, yeah, follow me for all the pertinent shit. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to further get it out there, Drew's Twitter is at Drew Spurs, so you could find out all this stuff there. But yeah, thanks, Drew, for coming and helping me out while Aaron and Nate are in Japan. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, always a blast, and love what you guys are doing on Patreon. So I do want to plug that again. Check out the Everything Elite Patreon, because it's probably already in its second, third month the best wrestling Patreon out there. So good job, guys.
Oh, thanks, brother. And that'll do it for this week's edition of EE. We'll be back next week. But for Drew, I'm Mike. We'll catch you next time.